What's up, mini truckers? I had a customer send me a truck with some carb problems, so he gave me two carbs and the one that was installed on the truck, and then an extra used one that he had bought. So, in trying to troubleshoot, I think I sent you the video, or I posted the video of the bad needle valve, but there's some other things that we can test. So, once you get the carburetor off, this is a fuel shut off, and the way you can test it is ground the carb. So just attach it anywhere. Maybe hard to do with one hand. Let's see. Just set the thing on there. And then what we're gonna do is put the positive, and we should hear a little clicking. Okay, it's not grounded then. I know this one is working. Okay, do you hear that noise? Let's see if I can get a better shot. So as I'm applying 12 volt power, you can hear this needle valve. So that is a good sign. So then you have this air vent solenoid, and same concept. So what we can do is ground it. So just attach it there. If you had wires, there's a lot of different ways to do this. And this one doesn't make a clicking noise. It makes like a, when I had it installed on the car, it's almost like a, it's pushing a diaphragm, so it almost sounds like a type noise. But if it does absolutely nothing like this one, then it's failed. So they sell these online. The way that it mounts on the carb, right in that hole, kind of wedge it in there like this. Okay, so the trick in getting it out, what I had to do, not all the carbs have this. This is actually an AC vacuum advance, and then this is a choke. So on the customer's carb, he has his choke built into the top, this top piece, so we didn't end up having to use those. But I needed to use that piece to put on his new carb, or his existing carb. Okay, and then you see in here and in here, they're basically kind of like accelerator boost pumps. So I'll take one out. Just take this one because it's going to be less screws. This is one of the other pieces that I replaced from this carb and put onto his existing carb. And I'll show you why in a second. So there's supposed to be like a solid rubber piece in there that creates a vacuum seal. Okay, and you can see that vacuum line, and it's gonna push. There's a spring in there as well. So basically, that's what it's gonna look like. So there's this piece that's pushing against this spring. Okay. And when vacuum pulls this, or pushes it, it's gonna move this needle valve. Okay, now if you look real close at this one, you try to get it to focus. Okay, and it's supposed to be rubber, but there's like a screen backing, and you can see that there's the rubber has deteriorated on this piece. I don't know if you can see that, but that's just like screen, almost like a screen mesh. So I don't think that it was sealing 100% properly. Okay, so that would go there. Don't forget to put your spring back on. Put these pieces like that. And make sure your vacuum line's going the right direction. It's gonna go towards these two coolant hoses. Okay. And then really you don't have much else to it. And take this part off. And this is kind of same type of thing. It's a little diaphragm. There's no vacuum going into this one. But it is at the bottom of the float bowl. So you have fuel in here. Let me turn this off and get a different screwdriver real quick. So you can see one other thing on working on these old carbs. If somebody gave you a used carb to work on, I had to grind so many different screw heads just because they were so badly worn. That's one I think I didn't have to grind, but there's one. So it adds a lot of time just having to take the thing apart. Okay, let me finish this one. I got the straight head here. So his main issue on his carb ended up being a culmination of things. So he had that bad choke valve, this air vent valve. Okay, so this is what's in here. And this just collects fuel. So you can see there's a lot of different ports in there. Make sure you clean those out. Get a little thin piece of metal or wire or something. Get those. I believe this one connects over to here, and this one maybe connects here. I'd have to double check, but when I was spraying them all out, I paid attention to it. Okay, this one also has a spring that sits on top of there, so don't forget that. I say that because one time I assembled it and I did forget it. So you can see this has fuel in there, and the fuel's drain from the bottom of the float here. And if we have time, I can show you that as well. Hold on one second. Okay, we're back. So basically, to get the float bowl off, you don't have to take off either of these. So just, I just took those off to show you what we're looking at. But you only have 3 screws. You've got one here at the top, and one there at the bottom. Okay, it may be a little bit stuck on. This one's been off a bunch, so it's not any issue. And then this is kind of what you have. So notice this used carb got a lot of debris in it. So I've already cleaned this. I don't have an ultrasonic cleaner, but it was very dirty. These are where the vacuum lines come in. Make sure those are nice and clean. Okay. Then on the top, this is where you've got your float. Okay, this is the float. This is your needle valve under here, and this is your float adjuster. So this little tab here, okay, this one doesn't work, but I would show you. So to get it down, you just push a little bit right there. To pull it up, maybe you could get something under it, or I had actually used just like a little 90-degree kind of dental tool to pull up on this. This one, the needle valve is stuck or jammed, so as fuel comes in here, okay, it travels in. It's supposed to come through that needle valve and let fuel in. Once the bowl would fill up, this would come up, and then it would shut off your fuel. There's a return line that dumps, the fuel pump's running, so it'll take your extra fuel and return it back to the fuel tank. This one, I couldn't ever get fuel in, so it made no difference. Okay, you've got your jets here. Okay, one of the things I always want to show people, I've got this carburetor cleaning tool with various diameter pieces. So if we take the smallest one that they have for sale and try to get in our jet, we can. So that one's clean. This one, let me try to get a light in there. But see how small that hole is? So that's why when everybody's, gets clogged carbs, it only takes one little speck of dirt, or if we had, gum from this that kind of got loosened up. Okay, you can see if it's on my finger, and then if it gets pulled into this little hole that I can't even get my smallest specialized carb cleaning tool into. It does fit in this one. Okay, and inside there, got another hole to clean out. This has got like a little rubber seal, and it's just going to be pressed in. Okay, this other piece, these can both come off. This comes off with a screwdriver. This one I got off with an 8mm wrench and just cleaned them all out. Okay, so if you have any issues with your Honda Acty carburetor, those are the things I would start with. So before you even disconnect it, try to find yourself a 12-volt battery, disconnect these wires. It'll already, or make sure it's grounded, then connect these to your positive lead on the battery. Same thing with this guy. Okay, these fail often. I read online they fail often. Everybody replaces them. I think it's about a $50 or $60 part. Fortunately, we were able to salvage the one from this carb and put it on. This is actually the old one. Okay, hopefully you find that informative. Another thing that you can do to verify the fuel pump is working, probably even before you get to the working on the carb, is disconnect the fuel line from here on the truck, turn the key, and if fuel comes out this hose that's going to be basically, sitting here not connected to the carb, then your fuel pump is working. So initially in troubleshooting this, the guy's fuel pump wasn't even working. So I replaced the fuel pump, put a new fuel filter, got it all mounted. Thought I was done, and it started, ran, decent. And then when the customer came and picked it up, we couldn't get it started again. So what we're finding is the float was adjusted way too high and was just flooding. So I could put fuel on the fuel pump without the engine running. This is the intake part of it, and fuel would just drip out of here. So I started getting, smart, because otherwise you have to disconnect the carb each time. If you notice on this end, it's just 2 bolts, but this is a coolant passage. Okay, so they push coolant through. This is also a coolant area. So every time you disconnect the carb, you lose a ton of coolant. It drains out a lot of here and a lot in this area. So what I started doing, so I didn't have to waste so much coolant, was just setting the carb on top of the engine with the fuel line connected. I'd turn the fuel on, and then I would see, okay, if it's leaking, the float is, not adjusted right. And if it wasn't leaking, maybe I had it adjusted properly. So if it didn't leak, I would then put it on the engine, try to get it started. And what I kept finding on this is I couldn't get it to spark at all, fire, do anything. And come to find out, after taking this float ball off, hooking fuel up, turning the fuel pump on, that was what you saw in my last video, and absolutely nothing happened with that needle valve. So that's a Honda Acty carb. Pretty straightforward. You got a lot of, vacuum assist. This is vacuum. On the existing one, this has a vacuum coming off of it, and that was probably the most critical. So I kind of experimented with just disconnecting different vacuum lines, and then I believe this vacuum line. But these two are pretty critical as well. All of them are going to add to the engine, so they're doing something, and you're going to need those. Okay, hopefully this is helpful to people, and you can learn about the Honda Acty 1991 STX carburetor.